Hey there, how's it going? So in this video, let's compare the Kyosho Beetle and the Tamiya Scorcher. I'm choosing to compare these two as I think this would probably be the most useful comparison. The Kyosho Beetle is much closer in price to the Scorcher when you factor in things like the motor and ESC than the Monster Beetle or Blitz Beetle. And on the surface at least, they have a lot of similarities. So let's begin with how they're alike. Well, they're both re-releases of two-wheel drive vintage buggies using the Volkswagen Beetle body. They're both primarily composed of metal parts. They both feature plastic electronics boxes, and they both use trailing arm front suspension. From there though, there are some big differences. First, the Scorcher. The Scorcher is the older design from 1979, an iconic Tamiya. Most people know this buggy. The chassis is a flat piece of FRP onto which the cast aluminium gearbox, plastic sealed electronics box and front suspension and basically everything mounts. The gearbox is a really simple old school design. It doesn't even come with a diff as standard, although you can buy an optional ball diff. When it's completed, the gearbox, the rear suspension, you really do get a sense of heft and sturdiness, and then you put it onto the chassis and that all kind of disappears. The Scorcher uses torsion beam suspension at the rear with simple oil dampers all round. The dampers are prone to leaking though, and many people choose to invert them to kind of mitigate this. I haven't had to do that yet, but I suspect I will have to at some point in the future. The front suspension uses torsion springs with a design that's very similar, mimics that of a full-scale Beetle suspension. The steering is a really old school setup with a very rudimentary servo saver design, and the servo itself doesn't screw in, it's actually secured with double-sided tape. It's an unusual design by modern standards, but you know, it gets the job done. The body is hard plastic and highly detailed, and the kit comes with a relatively realistic looking driver figure, though it does look a bit somewhat dated. As with pretty much all of their re-releases, Tamiya choose to make very few changes, so it's pretty much the same as the original. The battery compartment, the electronics box, is not designed to house a modern nickel metal hydride stick pack, so you'll either have to buy an old style humpback battery pack or some small and LiPo, or in some way modify the battery holder. Tamiya recommends that you use their M-size Lifey battery pack, which is about half the size of a standard nickel metal hydride stick pack. The rest of the buggy is pretty much as it was, and as such it isn't really designed to handle high power brushless setups or anything like that. In contrast, with their legendary series, Kyosho choose to update the design as much as possible while still maintaining the looks of the original. It's something that I really like about Kyosho with their approach. The Beetle is basically a Kyosho Scorpion underneath. It uses a metal ladder frame chassis onto which the sealed plastic electronics tub with a polycarbonate cover attached. The metal gearbox comes pre-assembled. It includes a diff and a slipper clutch. Kyosho did a lot to update the gear system on their re-releases, so the gears now use 48 pitch. All the screws are hex drive, and the screws on the underside of the chassis are flathead screws with countersunk holes, so that the actual underside is really nice and smooth. The polycarbonate body comes pre-cut, and you get a polycarbonate driver figure as well, but the detail is nothing like the Tamiya version. Kyosho bodies tend to lack the detail really. That's one of the downsides. I mean, hard body is always going to be more detailed than a polycarbonate body, but in general, the Kyosho's bodies I don't think have the detail that Tamiya's do. One of the good things about the Kyosho design is it's really easy to work on. For example, the diff can be removed with the gearbox in place, and just everything you've got very easy access to. That's not to say it's hard to work on the Scorcher, but I find working on the Kyosho Legendary Series buggies, particularly the two-wheel drive variants, much easier. Performance-wise, you probably suspect this already, but the Kyosho Beetle wins hands down. It's lighter than the Scorcher, more nimble, it's better at cornering, and it's way better at jumping. It's less prone to body roll, though I will say the kit tires that you get on this, the rears are fantastic, but the fronts are way too hard. they're almost like plastic. They don't grip well at all. And if you're running on concrete or asphalt or something, you really want to change the front tires. The kit comes with the hard front tires. You can actually buy soft compound and medium compound front tires. I highly recommend you change those. The suspension, when it's set up right, is much better than the Sand Scorcher. That said though, despite its old design, the Sand Scorcher torsion bar rear suspension works surprisingly well. If you go with the high gearing on the Sand Scorcher, you'll also be really surprised at just how quick it is, at least in a straight line. And that's using the stock silver can. It goes a lot quicker than you'd expect. The Kyosho Beetle doesn't come with a motor, so you're free to install whatever you want. Right from the get-go, this will handle moderately powerful brushless setup, so you can pretty much install whatever you want in there. Regarding build enjoyment, well, this is where the Sand Scorcher pulls ahead. The Sand Scorcher is by far the more enjoyable build, and it's more involved as well. Not only because of the hard body and the potential to go all out in the painting and the details, but the Kyosho Beetle comes with pre-built diffs, although I do suggest you dismantle them and do a better job of greasing the gears. Comes with a partially pre-built gearbox and partially built shocks, so all those together make the build somewhat simpler. The body, like I said, being polycarbonate, it takes less time to paint, and the Kyosho, they always provide masking sheets and pre-cut decals, so again, finishing the body is a lot more straightforward and a simpler task than finishing the body on the Sand Scorcher. Which one do I recommend? Well, I think that if you're looking for performance, then the Kyosho Beetle is the one to choose. Not only will it handle better, but it's all set up for modern electronics and brushless motors. That's not to say you can't run a Sand Scorcher. Yeah, indeed you can, but of the two, it's less suited to brushless motors, and in stock form is very likely to roll over, making a mess of that lovely body you spent hours and hours painting. The polycarbonate body on the Kyosho Beetle, it doesn't look as nice, but it's better at standing up to crashes and scrapes and whatever. I think if you only plan occasional light runs and you're more interested in a unique build, and this is especially true for anyone who's not had the pleasure of building one of the earlier Tamiya kits, particularly the SRB chassis, then the Sand Scorcher is the one to go for. Not only is it way more rewarding to build, but the hard body, the scale looks, you've got such a great potential for customization. As I'm fond of saying, you can't go wrong with either of them. They're both great, but if I had to choose one though, it would be the Sand Scorcher without a doubt. Despite its old school design and shortcomings, you know, the chassis has all the rigidity of a piece of ham. There is something just about the way it drives and how it looks when it's being driven that the Kyosho lacks. While the Kyosho Beetle can rip around the track, popping wheelies and clearing jumps, there's just something so cool about the way the Sand Scorcher drives. In this case, really, the whole really is greater than the sum of its parts. Well, those are my thoughts on the Tamiya Sand Scorcher and Kyosho Beetle. If you enjoyed this video and found it useful, please give me a thumbs up. Subscribe for more content like this, and I'll catch you in the next one. My name is David, and you've been watching KCRC.